Hello there, Sagittarius. Welcome to a full year 2026 love reading where we are going to be looking at every single month for the entire year of 2026 in your love and romance. And that is for those of you who are both in a relationship and out of a relationship. We're going to kind of divide this reading up to be able to tackle each area for those of you who are separated or maybe still with someone, for those of you who are interested in dating. And I'm also going to be using two separate decks here. Right now I'm shuffling a deck that is called the Yokai Tarot deck. And this deck is based off of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, except for it has some Japanese mythological folklore on it. And you'll get to zoom in nice and close in a moment. I know we've kind of got a far off view here, but we're going to go nice and close just like that in just a moment. And then I am going to grab another deck that is called the Dark Fantasy Tarot deck. And we will kind of use that for some extra energy, some extra clarification on some extra events in a given month. Okay, so let's get these all laid out here and then we can get right into it. And I am also going to grab a notepad and a pen. And I'm going to write down the timestamps for each of the months because this is going to be a lengthy reading. If you're ever interested in watching this video again in the future and deciding that you want to check out only a specific month, you can look at the description of this video. I'm going to put the timestamps of each month there so that you just click whichever month and go. And I'll also put it in the comments below. That's everything. All right, let's get into it. It's going to look like this. This is going to be January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. We're going to begin this with January. This is really interesting, Sagittarius, because the Page of Swords, I'm going to look at this depiction here quickly. It's in the reversal, but it shows the picture of a samurai. And historically speaking, because you guys know I love getting into history and mythology in my tarot readings, historically speaking, what this samurai energy is like from the perspective of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which most tarot decks are based off of. This deck is also based off of that most famous deck. That Page of Swords energy with the samurai is actually the card of the spy. And I'm not talking social media spy, although we will get to that in a moment. But I mean, historically speaking, the Page of Swords itself was the card of an authority like a king who was asking the page to go and gather information, to go and spy on somebody in and behind the scenes. It's the card of the assassin. It's the card of the spy. It's the card of that which is unseen in the background. And because we would be interested, at least I am interested in knowing why somebody has a energy of the unseen or things in the background that are unseen or perhaps spying. Because I want to know that, I'm going to grab the clarification card here for you and I'm going to see what it is that they are spying about, since it's just kind of giving us that energy that someone's spying, or that somebody has something going on in the unseen. This next card here, which I'll show you here, the Four of Swords in the reversal position, this gives us our answer. Because we can ask the question with this card, what is this going on in the background? What is the unseen? The Four of Swords in the reversal is the unseen. So what does the Four of Swords card in the reversal energy mean? And this is going to be something that you probably do not know. Because it's a little bit off center here. In modern tarot, people treat the Four of Swords as if it is healing after heartbreak. And for some of you, that could be very well the case. It could be that in the month of January 2026, somebody does not want you to know that they are healing after some kind of heartbreak. Or you are keeping your own self, kind of the healing part of you, in and behind the scenes so that nobody else can tell. While that is the modern perspective, that is true. But in a historical perspective, the Four of Swords, when it's in the reversal, is actually connected to economy and avarice. And I know we're talking about a love reading, but it's important to kind of look at that reality that for some reason, someone's economic life, finances, or monetary situations might be playing more of a part to the month of January than just love being here. Now, when we do these readings, again, let's kind of look at it from a perspective of people who are, we'll talk about partners. If you're in a relationship, we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about those of you who are separated. And then we will talk about those of you who have your eye on someone, even though maybe you're in the friend zone or something to that effect. And then we will talk about those of you who are dating for the first time in a while. Like you've just decided to get back into the dating scene, because the economic and finance and avarice energy and cards of authority and people in the background, those are going to affect you differently, each one of you. As an example, for those of you who are in a relationship, there could be some kind of a situation within finances, economy, or a person's love for money and not wanting to give up certain aspects of their money, their career, or some legal aspect that they are kind of keeping in the behind the scenes as something that's really bothering them. Because both of these cards are in the reversal, it takes on the more negative format of money. Somebody who could, again, deal with avarice, which is an overly over the top love for money that shouldn't necessarily be there, that can cause some kind of a blockage. Somebody could be very frustrated about their house and their finances, and they let that impact their life, which means it could impact their relationship. For those of you who are separated from someone, again, you could have a person who is really overly concerned with how to make money. That's like, it's almost like they don't even really want to think about things like love and romance right now, because what they're focused on is doing them in terms of their identity with money, with career, with status, but on the more negative side where they're going overboard with it, where they're forgetting a little bit of the dynamic that they are more than just some identity with a business or a lifestyle or a job or whatever it is. But it could be like that if you're separated from someone. That Four of Swords, again, is connected to, the key is avarice. The love of money, for the love of the power of money. For those of you who are not in a relationship, but you have your eye on someone, again, this does hold the energy of somebody who's healing through that dynamic. This person is really overly focused on how to make themselves feel like they're uplifted by virtue of their money and their identity. And then for those of you who are not interested in anybody yet, maybe you're just starting to think about going into the dating world, I would think that it would be your energy then that's really tied into your money dynamic. Like wanting to think about how to make money. Where should you go with your career? Maybe you're wanting to think of fast money. Because it's the card of avarice, it can be somebody who's prone to quick get rich quick schemes, and in that sense it kind of takes away from the loving energy for the month of January. So avarice is the main theme, and the avarice and that part of you working behind the scenes is the main theme for you for the month of January. But as the song goes, we've only just begun. So let's get on to the month of February here at the 8-minute mark into this video. The month of February does dip back into money again. This is going to be a really not financial, but a really fascinating, typical Sagittarian read. Because Sagittarius is, you guys, there's an awful lot of you out there who really do focus on a part of your identity to be connected to money. Sometimes you guys have a gambling thing. There's been quite a few Sagittarians that I know who are interested in that kind of an avenue. And the Six of Pentacles, or the Six of Coins in this deck, is the same such dynamic. But in the reversal, whereas the other cards were about the love of money, avarice, one of the 7 deadly sins, by the way. It's a little bit of a hard energy to deal with. The Six of Pentacles in the reversal is the card of usury, which is an really, really negative format of how someone's dealing with money as well. And this is where it would be valuable to grab that extra card here from that other deck, because usury is a heavy thing. Usury is exploitation for money. It's the kind of relationship dynamic where you're dealing with somebody. It doesn't have to be that you're dealing with someone, but I'm going to give you the example of what that looks like. Usury is sometimes when you deal with somebody who's willing to exploit you for money, like they are with you because you have a house together and it's more about the house and finances and identity than it actually is being in a relationship with you. Sometimes that can show up as being, women are more prone to this, being in a relationship with somebody and you're still with them because you don't have an alternative way out with your finances. That's not the most malicious form of usury, but to some degree it is a little bit of that aspect. So it's just worthy to note it in this reading. There are different avenues of usury. Usury is a form of selfishness. It's the exploitative kind. Now, it could be another way to deal with that is like a person who's at work and they are the boss and they're only using their employees in a certain way to gain something, right? They're using their employees for a benefit without giving enough back to their employees. That's the thing, right? Usury is the exploitation, and it's usually got to do with exploitation for value systems and especially with money. Remember, the word usury at its foundational level comes with the connection to taxation. But how do we take this old school historical word like usury and attach it to your life from the macrocosm to the microcosm? And we end up with the Lover's card. The Lover's card explains that it's not just somebody who's trying to use another person at work or at their job. Or it's like they're trying to build their identity based off of using other people with money. In the alternative, when we're saying someone's got an energy of usury, it's actually in their love life. So you're going to want to watch out for this, or make sure that you're not adopting that energy of using somebody else so you can gain some avenue of love. Yeah, that's a really heavy energy as well to be in for these first two first 2 months of 2026. For those of you who are not in a relationship with somebody, because what I just described will fit for a lot of people who are already with someone and they have to go through the reality that their partner might be in the relationship for reasons that are not as integrity based with dignity. But for those of you who are not in a relationship with someone and you have your eye on that person, just be warned a little bit, like be cautious, understand that it's a time for you to use discernment with regards to who it is that you want to have a relationship with, to the degree where you have to ask yourself, is the person I'm interested in more prone to using things for their own gain in its more negative connotation? Because again, people can do things for their own gain for good reasons. Selfishness isn't all bad, but usury is. And in the an alternative dynamic, make sure that you're not trying to bring somebody in your life so that they can fill some kind of a void and you ultimately use them in love. That's another thing. That would require some good healing, some background work, like that Page of Swords card was talking about. For those of you who are not in a relationship and you don't have your eye on somebody, it could be that you end up starting to talk to somebody. Somebody starts to communicate with you in the month of February. Maybe you meet on a social media dating site. You only talk a few times. Maybe you hit it off a little bit, but you have to kind of discover that this person might be trying to, as an example, they could be trying to get into the sack with you really easily. That's an example of usury in exchange, like exploiting somebody just so they can get what they want. Or somebody else could be really almost emotionally unavailable to the degree that they're just trying to fill a void with you if you do start to talk to somebody like that in the dating world. What I do really like, though, despite the fact that it feels like in these first few months, you've kind of got to have your eye out in the realms of love. Again, using that energy of discernment really well. I do like your March energy because it is a lovely dynamic of coming together with somebody in a sanctified, integrity-based, dignity-based way. So if there was somebody that you were dealing with in a partnership, in a relationship, and they had been coming from a position of less than integrity based, that looks like in the month of March, they have the possibility of switching that energy up and realizing for some reason that they shouldn't be treating you in that way. For those of you who are separated from someone, and again, somebody might have been treating you with less than dignity. Again, Two of Cups is a sanctified union. It is a deeply platonic union where people are coming together in unity and compassion in that month of March. And that's in the words of Arthur Edward Waite over 100 years ago. The Two of Cups, the word he used for the relationship that happens in the Two of Cups is sanctity, sanctimonious, which means holy. Essentially, it means it was like predetermined, predestined by God for something to occur in a very passionate, compassionate, I should say, way. Let's grab. And now the Lovers is in the reversal position. See? The imbalance that was had in love is now what it is that's being corrected and balanced. And this is especially so for those of you who were separated, because this insinuates that those who were separated come into union in the month of March. For those of you who had your eye on somebody and you were not sure if you were in a date, then maybe you were in the friend zone. Again, that energy comes into the month of March where you have people who were separated have the ability to come together in union with each other and step out of the friend zone dynamic. But that's in the month of March, closer to when the season changes. And honestly, people should pay more attention to when a season changes on a biological, almost like ecological level, because humans get out more. When spring comes, we all start going outside. We all start walking. We get in the sun more. We have more vitamin D in our body. With the change of a season, humans actually change as well. So do the trees, so does the grass, so does the air. And this is that time all of a sudden in a seasonal change where you're going to see some kind of a seasonal shift almost in your love life. And honestly, I think the same can be said for those of you who are single and looking to date somebody. It would all of a sudden be at that moment in the month of March where you start seeing somebody and coming together with somebody. That's like going steady. That's like actually coming together with somebody. Two of Cups, and somebody that you're supposed to. Now, let's add on at the 16-minute mark here. The month of April is the Page of Wands. Hugely underrated card because so many people in modern tarot love to say that the Page of Wands is just a little child. And if they're a little child or they're a youth, then they must be immature. But historically speaking, the Page of Wands was known as the faithful and honest lover when they are in the upright position. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. The faithful and honest lover. Which makes perfect sense with the previous reading, because in that previous reading, we saw that you were coming together with somebody. And no better person to be coming together with than somebody who's faithful, honest, and passionate. Let's grab another card from the Dark Fantasy Tarot deck and see what's going on here. The High Priestess is here. What an interesting combination. Let me grab one more card to match up with the High Priestess here, because the High Priestess is somebody who typically follows their heart, but the Three of Swords is also here as the person who was previously heartbroken. It kind of feels like there's a decision that's made internally within oneself, because that's the High Priestess's territory, to go forward with passion in this experience so that they don't have to sit in an energy of heartbreak like the Three of Swords would bring. Just a heads up though, while that can turn out very good and it can be very brave, make sure that it's not done out of haste and with too much riskiness, because there is a little bit of an energy, like I said, almost of like taking a risk or a gamble that's coming from the earlier cards in the previous months. I do like, though, that if you are willing to kind of bet on your love life all of a sudden, that it's being done from the position of honesty with that Page of Wands card. Honesty, passion, and integrity. Now, after 2 good months of love, we do see a bit of a change in the energy as we have the Queen of Swords coming in here. And that is the card of somebody who is familiar with sorrow. In the reversal, it can actually be a moment of sorrow. It can be loss of some sort. It can be embarrassment. But whatever it is, there's a deep sense of grief and frustration that comes with the dynamic. Ooh. And we've got it twice in the upright position as well. In the upright position, it is still the card of loss and sorrow. It's just in the upright position, she's actually more severe. People have spoken about the Queen of Swords in a modern sense as somebody who holds the sword of truth and is a very honest person. But because she's connected to sorrow and grief, and one of these cards is in the reversal, then it makes more sense to me from a historical perspective not to look at that card as connected to the Justice card, which, quite frankly, justice legally, legal court proceedings, those belong more to the King of Cups. I know that's going to surprise you. I know you might have thought King of Swords. King of Swords is actually a military leader. Queen of Swords is more connected to making judgments. I mean, like the Queen of Hearts, like off with her head kind of judgments, because she's got a severity. She can lay down punishments because she's connected to intense grief. She doesn't have any energy connected to her historically of happiness. She is the card of female sorrow. And having both of those here denotes an intense sense of sorrow for that particular month because of something that's being grieved in the month of May. Now, I want to mention with both cards here, that could be coming from both you and a person that you're in a relationship with. There could be some kind of an avenue. I'm also going to say, and take this with a grain of salt, but if any of you do go through what I'm about to say, remember you heard it here, but this is not going to be for everybody. Queen of Swords is the card of loss of children, loss of family. So there could be a deep loss that it affects somebody on the outside or in like a family dynamic, heaven forbid in a child dynamic. But I say that because the card immediately beforehand was a youth. It is a picture of a child, right? So some of you may end up finding a pregnancy difficulty. That could happen in and around the month of May because the Queen of Swords is connected to fertility problems. Now, the Fool card is in the next month, but before we step into that next month, there is something to be said about the fact that the Fool card is the zero card. It is the card of restarting something, so it also lays credibility or weight to the fact that in the month of May, with these queens, there could have been a loss that causes a restart, a new path to unfold in the next month. Now let's get into it. Speaking of that next month, at the 22-minute and 29-second mark here for the month of June, like I said, we have the card of the new path. And I think I'm going to go have to deal with my son in a second. Let me just go pause this video because he looks like he's about to have a loss over the computer. Okay, well, I will try and work through this reading as I can. If I have to pause this reading a bunch to go and deal with my son, he's very frustrated, then I will do that. And I always heavily, heavily appreciate anybody who understands me doing that as a mother, because I am a mom on my own. So to get you your readings and help to increase your spirituality, sometimes I have to deal with my own stuff too. So I'm very appreciative of you guys for understanding that. So the June card. June is connected to a new path. What I do like is that this is in the upright position, which means somebody, instead of sitting in anxiety and grief, they have actually shifted the dynamic in the month of June, and they are coming from a position of their heart on this new path. The card that actually, that's what I just said. I said they're coming at it from a new perspective of with their heart. And here's the Hanged Man in the reversal, which we know is the card from being stuck like a loss. And in the reversal is a person who now is mastering the new perspective. So the mind shifts. If you are in a dynamic with a person, especially in the previous month, in the month of May, and there feels like a loss that has occurred, by 1 month later, you will have a new perspective. For those of you, if you happen to separate from a partner or don't get lifted off the ground, like say you just started to date somebody, for those of you who were single, you started to talk to somebody in a good, playful way in the first 2 months, and then maybe in that third month you went through that loss. Maybe you stopped talking to this person. By the time in the month of June that you get there, you'll have a new perspective of it, and you will be right and ready and willing to go and to continue into the world of leading with your heart to gain a sense of love. But that goes for all of you. For those of you who are in relationships and experience a frustration in the month of May, 1 month later, you are leading with your heart again in a beautiful and masterful way. And for those in separation, again, you are leading from your heart by the time you get into the month of June, despite any difficulties that you had. Now, July is interesting. The card for the month of July, let me just grab that here. We are more than halfway through this reading now. We're going to be coming up, we're on the 6th and 7th month mark. Here we go. For the month of July, we have the Knight of Swords here. Historically speaking, the Knight of Swords is the card of the one who charges into battle. He usually brings an announcement of battle, but in the alternative, he is also the card of bravery, which does feel kind of familiar to the energy that we just saw in the month of June. Because if you think about what it takes to follow your heart and step off of the cliff of life, it takes a sense of bravery. And we have this energy almost like repeating itself, like a theme is popping up again. And that often happens in 12-month readings because we get such a wide perspective of lessons that a person is learning that if they haven't fully integrated the lesson, it'll often pop up in one of the future months. It's kind of like a Mercury retrograde that way, or any retrograde for that matter. The lesson kind of repeats itself a little bit later on down the road. And so here we have an example of that. But let's grab, the Judgment card is here. It was in the reversal when I picked it up. And the Judgment card is giving us that sense of bravery. But, like when I say it's giving that sense of bravery, what I mean is that when I'm trying to look at the Knight of Swords and I'm saying to myself, okay, is this a card about opposition, battle, or is this card about bravery? When I get the Judgment in the reversal, it's not about battle because the battle is already over by the time we get to the Judgment card. But what is required of the Judgment card in the reversal is bravery. To be brave, to go towards the calling of your path. That's why this angel has a trumpet. They are sounding the notification of a calling coming from within you, coming from outside of you even, synchronistically speaking. But what it takes to go towards the calling is bravery. So we have a bravery card here, and we have a card that is a need for bravery. But I say a need for bravery because when the Judgment card is in the reversal, it insinuates that a person is still a little resistant, still a little bit hesitant to going forward with the bravery that they need. And because we've got one card of bravery and another card of that indecision, and that sitting in the energy of a need for bravery, I do think the main energy for the month of July is likely to be a position of indecision and stagnancy. Wanting to go forward, but holding yourself back, essentially. Which makes a lot of sense for the next card that we're going to get into at this 28-minute mark here for the month of August. The month of August is, well, you know what? If there's a twofold energy, first and foremost, it's the Hermit card. So it is being on your own, and it gives more of a reality, like a pattern showing up as we go through these months, that you could find some downtime from a particular person that you were dealing with in those previous months. And that's why you felt like you were sitting still the month before. You're on your own with the Hermit. But when the Hermit is in the upright position, it actually means that you have finished a phase of resistance. So you see how that works out. We've got 1 month that's like, oh, this person's still resistant. And we pull one next month and it shows us that you have learned through the lesson of resistance that you are more willing to go on the path instead of being resistant to the path. And what is the path? Your love, your desire, the thing that lights your heart up. Because that's what the Hermit's doing. In the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith sense, the traditional Hermit card, he has a lantern in his hand. And inside of the lantern that the Hermit is carrying is a star. It's a star connected to the, right there, see the lantern is even in this deck. The star inside of the lantern is connected to the star card of hopes and wishes and dreams. So the hermit goes on a spiritual path of, essentially, it's kind of like manifestation, the path that they're being called towards. But they are resisting it a little bit in the previous month. And now they are realizing that they can move forward in that particular month of August. Now, the clarification card that I got was the Devil card. And that is a card of bondage. But it is a card of temporary bondage. And so if you've got the card like the Hermit, that tells us you are now in a phase in the month of August of being willing to go forward, then the Devil card is here trying to hold you back further into that stagnancy and not moving, but you're kind of winning against it. Now, sometimes when people deal with the devil and the devil yanks on their shoulders metaphorically, then a person does get stuck and they do resist and they stay where they are. They would stay in bondage. But because the Hermit is here, it's the beginning of moving away from that. But the devil is still present. So there is likely to still be anxieties that you deal with, overthinking that you deal with, even the potential of obsessive thinking when anxieties do show up in that particular month of August, even though you are taking the first couple of steps to healing yourself from a previous uncomfort, one that I think probably happened in and around the month of May. It seems like it's taking a little bit of healing, but the Hermit card is that first kind of step forward to get you to where you need to go. Now, I know we are in the middle of the year here, 2026, when we're looking at these cards. I'm reading this in January, but for those of you, again, whenever you're reading this, I know we're so far at the month of August and there's a little bit of a bummer. There's like some good that happened at the beginning of the year. Then there's a little bit of some negative energy. But those last 3 months are looking really interesting. I'm just going to put it out there. The Lover's card is coming up. The Hierophant is coming up. We just haven't gotten to it yet. So don't be too hopeless when you see these cards have a little bit of a bummer. We will get to it in a moment where I do think that's going to turn around a little bit. Now that brings us to the month of September, where all of a sudden we've got the Knight of Cups here. The Knight of Cups is, that's the actual knight in shining armor. I know a lot of people look at the knight in shining armor as the Knight of Swords, and to some degree he is very much armored up. But the Knight of Cups is the metaphoric knight in shining armor, the one who's supposed to sweep you off your feet. He's a messenger card. He's a card of communication. It is in the reversal, though. So it is communication still, but it's the kind that can bring artificial communication or swindling or trickery. I want you guys to pay attention to that in the month of September, lest somebody communicate with you and they feed you some bullshit. Let's pull another clarification card for this just to see what's going on here. The Six of Swords in the reversal. Huh. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, wow. That's really interesting. You guys are not going to believe this. Anytime I tell somebody about what the Six of Swords means in the reversal, historically speaking, it kind of blows their mind. Because a lot of people talk about this as being journeys, distance, boats, waterway passages, and that's all very true. In the upright position, even Arthur Edward Waite said that over 100 years ago. Yep. But in the reversal, a very specific energy given to the Six of Swords is declarations of love. Confessions. Because why do you think they're getting on the boat together? Why do you think one person is trying to make their way to another? Because they like this person. They want to declare that they're in love with this person. The problem is, though, it's a little bit hard to reconcile, and I'm going to pull another card here. But the problem is the Knight of Cups is somebody who's saying that communication in the wrong way, in a fraudulent way. And my brain is kind of sitting here wondering if someone's going to try to declare their love or declare their affection for you, but they don't actually mean it in the right way, which would be really ridiculous. It's like, it's kind of gaslighty. And I just want to pull another card just to see, because the alternative is that you could deal with somebody in the month of September who has previously done something fraudulent and maybe they're now trying to make up for it. So let me pull a card about that. Maybe this person is trying to declare their love and confess their love because they were an asshole beforehand. Let's see what's up. Okay. The Emperor in the reversal is a very over-controlling individual. They're also somebody who does want to have their Empress. Let's pull one more. 5 of Wands in the reversal. Jealousy and envy. I don't get a good vibe from this person. I think this person might think that they love you. And I think that this person might really be convinced that they want to declare their love for you, but they don't realize that it's coming from a conditional love kind of way instead of actual unconditional love. Then there is really only one love, and it is the unconditional kind. The problem is that in our modern society, we have a tendency to believe in conditional love as if it was real love. Conditional love means that a person is willing to drop you off at the side of the road if a condition is broken. They are willing to break up with you if something doesn't match what they want in life. They are willing to get the ick about you. They never want to speak to you again if something doesn't go the way that they have a list of conditions set out. If you don't measure up to what they want. That also includes people who are unfaithful. There are people who say, I will never talk to somebody again if they break the condition and are not going to be faithful to me, and they cheat on me. And in the modern world, that does make sense. Who the hell wants somebody who's going to cheat on them? But there's a difference between loving that person still, even if they've cheated, and a difference between literally breaking the condition and you never care about that person again, you never love that person. Somebody who cheats on you, if you really did love them, just because they cheated on you, doesn't mean that you don't love them anymore. If it's real unconditional love. It usually does mean that you're at a distance from them and you put your boundaries up and you don't stay in that situation. Let's be real. Let's keep our boundaries up here, people, right? But do you just fall out of love with somebody because they've done something that it didn't match your conditions? Not if it's real unconditional love. But that's why I'm saying, do you see how easy it is, even when I say that to you here, how easy it is for people to get a little riled up when I say that? It hurts the ego a little bit. It hurts people when they say, no way, man. They start to think to themselves, there's no way it would be reasonable to love someone who's cheated on you. And I get it. I do. But again, there is a difference between conditional and unconditional. And the unconditional kind is the one that's like godlike. It's the one that humans have a hard time achieving. That is possible. There are many people out there who even have children whose children are heinously brutal individuals. And yet their mother or their father still finds some compassion, even at a distance from them, to still love that person. In the alternative, sometimes somebody who's a complete shithead doesn't really love the other person at all. They're just conditional. They might think they do, but they might not. And that's what it looks like. It looks like somebody's going to confess something. It looks like they're going to confess love, but because they have the cards of envy, trickery, and over-controlling energy surrounding the confession, I don't think they realize that there's a lack of integrity and truth and coherence with what it is that they're dealing with, what their version of love is. And I think their version of love might be a little flawed. Watch out for that, guys. So let's go now into the month of, we're doing October now, where things start to get a little bit different. This is when I said you've got the Hierophant coming up. Sorry if I said the Hierophant earlier on in this reading. We have the Hierophant, and we've got the Lovers after. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about October for the Hierophant card. So the Hierophant card here for your month of October. This is a very valuable card. To some degree, it sits in a handful of the most important cards in all of the tarot deck, according to Arthur Edward Waite. And I'm going to pull a clarification card with this one, because the Hierophant in a modern perspective is a card of commitment. People always say, hey, it's a picture of a pope. And what does a pope do? A pope marries people together. But historically speaking, I keep saying it like that, but over 100 years ago, Arthur Edward Waite spoke about the Hierophant being the card of rigid dogma. And its purpose was to be torn down. That if a person has rules that are way too rigid, too dogmatic, they are not having an open mind about things, then the universe will swoop in, kind of like the synchronicity of Carl Jung in psychology, that the universe synchronistically comes in and tears down an old rigid archetype, an old experience that somebody was in, to make way for a better experience. So in the case of this deck that I'm shuffling now, the Dark Fantasy deck, I'm going to shuffle and see which one it is. Is it, it's definitely pulling down of the old rigid system. I was going to say, is it the idea of somebody in commitment, or is it somebody pulling down an old system? You know what's interesting though? The Devil card does have the Lovers on it. The Devil though, he's the one in charge of the dogmatic system. But he's also in charge of binding people together. Not in a sense of healthy commitment, though. It's in a sense of unhealthy commitment. And the Hierophant is in the upright position, which means the rigid dogmatic view that you might have in that month of October is still present. Now, for those of you who don't understand what rigid and what dogmatic look like in a relationship, picture it like this. Because it's a card of the Catholic Church, it's easy to picture here where we have, how a church, if you were to picture it, that a church has a lot of rules about how the church should be. Like, you have to be like this, you have to dress a certain way, it has to be on this building, it has to be every Sunday or every whatever the case is. That's what rigid rules of dogma look like in the church. But when we look at that from the macrocosm of history to the microcosm of what it could look like in your life, in the realms of love, it looks like a person who believes love is only supposed to go one certain way. That they have rules, very rigid rules, like a person has to be like this. They have to talk to you a certain way. There has to be a white picket fence. There has to be someone who has business this way. Maybe there has to be rules of money, whatever it is. That's rigid dogma. And when it's in the upright position, it means the rigid dogma is still present and still has to be torn down. The reason it's usually something that needs to get torn down is because when somebody is too rigid in a relationship, the relationship usually gets blown. When somebody is too interested in how to preserve things for their self, which is what the Devil does, he preserves what he wants, and he doesn't consider that the other people are in bondage because of it, then usually it blows the relationship. The fact that this is in the upright position, it does insinuate that you're together with someone, but it is a little bit of a foreshadowing warning that there could be some difficulty that happens if somebody is keeping score too much, or if somebody's rules in the relationship are too rigid. Now, speaking of, like I said, at this now 43-minute and 10-second mark, we are venturing into the month of November. And what do we have in the month of November? The Lovers. Like I said, we do have cards of commitment, cards with even the Devil has energies of commitment, and we have the Lovers, and we have the Hierophant. These are all cards about coming together with someone, but it's not a healthy dynamic. It's imbalanced. The Devil card shows the imbalance. The Hierophant shows the imbalance, and the Lovers card in the reversal shows the imbalance. Let me pull a bit of an extra card here because sometimes the Lovers card can be separation when it's in the reversal, but if it's not actual separation, it's imbalance. Let me see here. Let's shuffle this. What do we have? We have the Knight of Cups. Interesting energy. You've had, now that's 2 knights. Both of them were in the reversal. The Knight of Swords and the Knight of Cups were both here in the reversal. And I think it's worthy to note that when you have two knights that are in the reversal position, it means that somebody is susceptible to some kind of a problem. It's susceptibility. And I think if you have the lovers in the reversal, which is imbalance, and you have somebody who is susceptible to something, then when you merge the two cards together, it looks like somebody is susceptible to being imbalanced. But again, the Knight of Cups, it brings in that dynamic of artificial. It brings in that dynamic of trickery. It is communications, but it's communications that are being had in an inappropriate way. This seems to be a major theme for you guys in 2026. The art of communications and the art of expectations in relationships. That is to say, how do you communicate your needs without going over the appropriate expectations that you should have with another person? Like sometimes we get a visual of what we expect in a relationship. And we think we absolutely need those things. And we express those things to our partner without taking into consideration that our partners might not be able to fulfill the expectations that we're giving, especially if what we're building our expectations on is this false conditional view of what relationships are supposed to be like. So just as a heads up, because this is a theme for your almost entire year, for a lot of you, it's probably your energy that's being like a little bit over the top with your expectations and perhaps causing for some of the reasons of the ups and downs in this year. So there should be a little bit of a mode of personal responsibility that comes in when handling relationships in the future. Not to over-expect, not to put somebody on a pillar, not to be unreasonable and unrealistic. I'll give you one more really important lesson that comes with that, by the way. Especially when it comes to putting people on a pedestal or being unrealistic in a relationship, wanting people to do everything the right way the first time. It's just not possible. And hear me out. Here's the example. So in life, I've said this in many readings and I'll say it again here now. In life, if you wanted to learn how to ride a bike, you have to fall off it a whole bunch of times. You have to make the mistake over and over and over again in order to get on the bike and learn how to ride the bike. Correct? Right? And so the same thing happens if you're like going to swim. If you want to learn how to swim, you have to sink over and over again. You sink first many times before you ever learn how to swim. Right? So the nature of humans, even when we learn how to walk, we had to fall on our knees as babies over and over again. Not just once. We don't just make the mistake once and suddenly we learned. Or when we had to talk and learn how to speak a language, we had to fail at it over and over again, week after week after week. We could barely say the word mom properly when we were little. And we had to mess up over and over again. Right? Okay, the reason I'm saying all of this is because in relationships, we have a tendency to expect the other person to get what we want right on the first or second try, when the reality is that humans make so many mistakes, they end up making like 17 mistakes first. You see the problem? You see how we as humans have a tendency to expect so much out of somebody. We expect so much of a white picket fence in a relationship that we only let a person break a condition once or twice, even though by human nature, every single thing that we do darn near requires us to make mistakes repetitively and repetitively and repetitively. And we think, oh my gosh, this person, they're just not learning. They messed up so many times. Yep, and that is exactly what they are supposed to do, because that is what humans do in every area of life. They suck at walking. They suck at talking. They suck at cleaning. They suck at riding a bike 70 times before they ever get good at it. So, if there is a propensity to be learning, or if there is a like a reality that in this year you're going to be learning the dynamic of expectations. It could be on your side of things, because why else would this reading have this energy so many times of imbalance in the world of expectations, unless it was a message that was meant for you? Typically it's not going to be other people. Sure, there are some cross watchers, but it's typically not everybody who's going to be coming to cross watch the video. The message is going to be here for Sagittariuses to watch out for what they expect from another person in a relationship, and to make sure that what they expect is actually reasonable, lest they trick their own selves, lest you think you really are in love with somebody, but maybe you are only conditionally interested in somebody. Lest you don't necessarily have the full picture of what love could be in its fullest way. Maybe you've never even experienced it before. Maybe nobody has loved you the way that humans are designed to be loved. And that happens for many of us. Because remember, if we want to ride a bike, there has to be a bike in front of us to learn how to do it. We can't learn how to ride a bike without one there. So for many of the people out there, it has been hard to get love in this life because there's never been love that's shown to us. So we build a different perspective of what love is supposed to be like. This is like a life lesson here. Okay. This is the energy of November. Let's take it into the last month though. Now that I've got that lesson done, that little bit of intuition that's coming out of me, that the month of December here brings the Knight of Pentacles, a third knight. It is in the reversal as well. And remember, I had mentioned that when you have two knights in the reversal, it means something. Well, when you have three knights and they're all in the reversal, I just put it in the upright there for a second, then there is a completely different meaning when you have three knights here. And it's interesting because the Knight of Pentacles, or the Knight of Coins, it's called in this deck. I'm going to pull some clarification card here because it is about stagnancy when it's in the reversal. But when you have three knights, it's also about an encounter with someone. It's a literal, like sometimes it's actually three knights is also in the reversal, is also the card of a duel. So it could be that you have an encounter with somebody in the month of December that feels difficult, like argumentative, and it causes stagnancy in your love life. Like talking to somebody and you don't hit it off, or some kind of a conflict happens and you just freeze up a little bit. Not the way that I want you to be ending your year. So let's grab a clarification here. That's an interesting dynamic too. Ace of Swords. Ace of Swords is about triumph in communication, while the Knight of Pentacles in the reversal with three different knights is about duels and battles, which is a format of communication. If you put the two of them together, it could insinuate that you do have a battle with somebody. You do have a confrontation with somebody, but you are on the winning end. Or you're discussing something that you fervently want to win out in. In relationships, that could be a good thing if you are coming from a position of truth and integrity, which the Ace of Swords in the upright usually does. But as a reminder, because there is a heavy theme about keeping score and expectations that have been going on in this reading, that for some of you, you may be determined to get a victory. So you are having argumentative energies with someone because you want to be right. You want to win. In the Knight of Coins in the reversal, or the Knight of Pentacles, is usually somebody who has difficulty crossing the finish line, no matter how much they want to win. So the main theme, I know it's going to be battle. Even the sword that they have. What do you think swords are about? I know you think they're about air signs, but in the Arthur Edward Waite, Rider Waite Smith, the original, historical common tarot, swords are battle weapons, right? They are associated to truth, sure, but everybody thinks of it as an air sign because it was associations, I believe, like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the Grand Orient. Those different secret societies, they attributed astrology to a tarot sign. It's a Kabbalistic approach. Arthur Edward Waite didn't do that. In his books, like The Pictorial Key to the Tarot, He published in 1910. He doesn't list any cards as astrologically relevant because he didn't care about that as much. That was other secret societies. He was a member of the Order of the Golden Dawn until he wasn't, because he left it because he didn't agree with a lot of what they were doing. And so you see the sword as a battle weapon of truth instead of just connected to the air signs of like in your mind. So you've got one card of a difficulty crossing and a difficulty with the 3 knights, including battle, and another card of battle. And at the baseline, it looks like there's going to be battles or arguments or conflict in the month of December. But again, I'm going to pull that clarification card to see if you're on the winning side of that. Or even, there's also, oh, the devil card. Oh, shit, eh? Oh, wow. Look at that. That devil card that was in the upright position about being bound into something. It looks like the conversation and the argument is to free yourself up so you're not still bound to something that you shouldn't be. It's almost like the battle weapon of the sword of truth is there to cut yourself from something that's binding you. I'm assuming what's binding you is to some degree going to be somebody's rigid thinking, because the devil card came up already, but it came up with the Hierophant. Remember, the card of someone who's got a perspective about how relationships should go. The devil was in the upright, keeping someone in that mode. And then 2 months later, you and a person get into an argument about how that view of how relationships should go is the bullshit view. And I think that either you're arguing with a person and you're saying to this person, your view is incorrect and I'm not going to be bound into your idea or your ideologies or your logic of it, or another person gets sick of you doing that to them and they might argue with you over it. But here's the interesting thing with the Ace of Swords. That's a conversation that has to happen. That's a battle that should be had so that people can get out of bondage. So it's not necessarily about what one person wins. It's that both people can get free from bondage by having that kind of a difficult conversation. It shouldn't be done in an argument. It should be done in a, reciprocally, emotionally integral way. But I think with the Ace of Swords and the Knight of Coins and the other knights, it's probably going to come from people going toe to toe with one another. A lot of lessons here. A lot of lessons, Sagittarius. You know what I didn't see, though? Ultimately, in any of the events in this year, despite the times where there was at the beginning of the year some good energy, and as you got to the later parts of the month, there's a little bit of difficulties, I didn't see the Tower card. I didn't see an event in a month of absolute heartbreak card. We saw the heartbreak come up as an extra clarification card. But a lot of the heavier cards of doom and gloom, like the 10 of Swords with people's bodies dying, we didn't see those. So it's not a terrible year. It's a lesson learning year in love with somebody that you're apparently going to be getting together with or staying together with and doing the trials and tribulations of life with. You wanted a relationship. You wanted love. Well, there it is. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the redo, right? And so it's like, it's that real perspective. It's that idea of saying to yourself, what do you want? And then once you get it, and once you have a relationship, you get to say to yourself, oh, is this really what I wanted? It's like that. It's like, it's a grounded and very hyper-realistic energy, making sure that you don't have rosy-colored glasses on in life. Which is honestly a really powerful lesson to learn that not everybody does. I'm going to leave you off with that, Sagittarius. That was a eye-opening reading. And of course, if you guys are ever interested in checking into this reading again, you're more than welcome to check the timestamps out in the description of this video. That way you can, pick a month if you need to and rehash some of the things that we might need to learn, not just now, but in the future when those events actually come up. I will leave you off with this. Thank you very much. Many blessings to you. And I've got 2 more readings to do, Aquarius and Pisces, and get their year readings done. And then these will be in a playlist of all of the 2026 readings on the front of my YouTube channel for you guys to watch for the entire year of 2026, no matter how many times you need to watch these videos. Blessings again, and ciao for now.